One,
Yep.
2, 3. Hello, everybody. This is Founder Laerun, and I'm here with Lady Shel, and welcome to Fantasy Grounds Unity A through Z, Episode 12. I would like to say hello to Shel. Hi, Shel.
Hey there. I'm just looking at my screen and it looks like we're not live yet. It may just be me though.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a delay. How are you doing? Happy New Year, by the way.
I'm doing fine. Happy New Year to you. We're growing like a weed here at Fantasy Grounds College, and but we still have room for more. If anyone out there has not joined us yet, I will give you the invite in our chat here.
Yes, very cool. All right, so today we're going to focus on a very narrow aspect of Fantasy Grounds. We're using the D&D 5e rule set, by the way. Today we're going to talk about the PC banner, which is where you import, export, and manage characters. And we're also going to be talking about the note banner, which is where you simply make notes. So these are the two banners that are on the right-hand side that we're going to discuss today. So we're going to be a little bit more in depth, a little bit more focused, not so much all over the place. Okay, so do you have anything else to say, Shel, before we get going?
Nope. And you're in the GM mode for the banners on the right-hand side.
That is correct.
I was just wondering because it's not double space or whatever, but it shows both of them. I was just making sure they're both showing.
What she's saying is in the library you can pick to be in different modes, and players can select those too. But in this case, I am in the GM mode, and the reason I have it set that way is so you're not confused with too many buttons. So that's basically what we're focusing on. And to be honest with you, if I went down this list manually and removed some of these, this would narrow this down even more. So if I took in these little arrows and removed the unnecessary banners, I could focus this down to what we're going to discuss. So I have just two banners up there at the end of, see now I've selected nothing but those two. So those are the two things we're going to be talking about. All right, so first of all, this window here is usually accessible by both the game master and the player. However, some of the functions I'm going to show you is the host only. So here we already have characters that are already built. And then we also have a character that I imported, and this was Lady Shel's character, and it says owned by Lady Shel. So she had come into a different episode and connected to Fantasy Grounds. And then she claimed her character, and this is, we either built it or you can pull in a character, and we're going to show you that. And then there is a new character sheet, which is which this is showing here. And if I right-click on it, there are different menu items. So, for instance, if I didn't want Lady Shel to use the same character, or maybe she left the game, or whatever the issue is, if I right-click on it and I click on Clear Owner, that will clear anyone who had formerly possessed it. If you want to reserve a character for somebody for some reason, you can right-click on it, and then you would click on this mask here, and now that character is claimed by me. So when people log into my table, this will not be shown as available. It'll only be these others. And then if I want to delete one of these, like this one on the left, let's say I made a mistake or I want to clean this up, all I have to do is right-click on it, click Delete Item, and then confirm it, and that deletes whatever it is that you are trying to get rid of. So that is your right-click menu on a specific character, and that's what you're going to get for options. So you have delete, you have create an item, which is a shortcut to pushing this green plus button on the frame, and then you have clear owner, and then you have take ownership. So if I want to clear the ownership on Lady Shel's character again, right click, hit the eraser, and now that character will be available for the rest of the people that join your table. So that's how you manage the possession and how you create or delete an existing character. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it deletes it for all time. It just deletes it for this campaign. Because if I go back into import, it'll probably still be there for me to import. So once you make a character and it's saved, it saves it in a vault, and you'll still have access to it in a different session, or you can re-import it if you need to. So I cleaned up that, and now what I'm going to do is create a new character. So when a new player comes on the table, or if you're the game master, you just click on PC, and you can right click and create a new item, or you can click on the green plus button, which is what I'm used to. Some people like the right click create, that's fine. So here are the character selection window for the characters that are built. Here is the new character sheet. And now we're going to break this character sheet down. So do you have any comments, Shel, before we get going?
No, I kind of messed up my video thing. I had it on pause and
Oh,
nothing was going, and now I'm like super far behind.
oh wow. Okay. All right. So we're going to get into the next part of this episode where we are going to break down the character sheet. So this is a 5th edition character sheet. If you're using Pathfinder or Starfinder or any of the other core rules, they'll be kind of similar, but the layout of things will be different. But I just want you to know that it's very similar. It's not too much different. Things will be titled differently, and you might have a couple different tabs, but it's really going to be very similar, and you don't have to worry too much about what it's actually, what it looks like so much. But just keep in mind the different things that you might come across. So the next thing is to break down the character sheet. I think this is an important aspect of learning Fantasy Grounds. You really need to know this so that you're able to manage your table and also manage your characters. So it's very important that you have this information. So first of all your ability scores are listed here, all your saves. You have your death saves down below, which is a dice roll. So when you click on the little dice, it'll roll. Every little square here, it's kind of rounded off corners on these squares, are dice roll. So if you mouse over, your hand, a little hand icon will show. You double click on it, that is going to roll. If you hover over it and you single left click and drag, you can drag and drop the rolls as well. You can also take those rolls and put them in the shortcuts. So it just depends on what you're doing. So you have your name, your class and level, and you have this little magnifying glass, which is a breakout window, which is where you manage your leveling and your character class and such. And then you have another pop-up window, which is the combat calculator. So the combat calculator is just a stack up of all the different features on your character sheet that gives you the totals depending on what's selected for your character. So these are the two pop-out windows from this sheet. And then you have these rollable links here, which are these little teeny dice in the bottom left corner. And then the little stars mean you're proficient. So if you have a star in something, it means you're proficient in that particular thing. And your passive perceptions here, and when you build your character, the stuff will start getting filled out. Most of it automatically in the beginning. So you'll have a lot of automation in the beginning of it when you build your characters. So there's another way to build characters. We'll mention that after I'm done breaking down the sheet, but there is another way to build. So if you're building it this way manually, You have to be careful what order you build your character in this case. So you always start with your ability scores. We recommend using background second, race third, and then class and level. So when you drag and drop items, you want to do it in that order and try to stay to that order. That way the calculations come out correctly. And this is what we teach in our classes as well. Now, some people would argue that you could do race before background. That's fine. But just keep in mind your skills. So when you have a background, you usually are forced one or two skills. When you pick a race, sometimes you have an option, like with the half-elf. And if you reverse that and you've already picked a skill from background and you did race first, you don't have a choice. So you'd have to research that and make sure that these skills don't overlap. And that's the only real caution we have with that. But as far as the character sheet goes, this is the breakdown. So you got class and level, combat calculation, and this is the main page. Now, one other smaller thing is your portrait. So if you click on the portrait, which is the top left corner, and then you click on this little bag, if you have anything in your inventory, you can select a portrait of your choice. So if you wanted to, you just double click on that and that becomes your portrait. And if you don't have a token, your portrait becomes your default token. So the portrait and tokens are different. However, if you don't have a token, your portrait will be your default token. If for some reason this is blank, because I've seen that happen where your image doesn't load, you just take the portrait, drag and drop it on top of the token area, and then it will fix it. Up here, you have your inspiration button. So if you're on the combat tracker and your game master gives you inspiration, you'll check that off and it put a little star on your name. Now, the main tab is mostly for information. When you're done building your character, you'll probably use the actions tab more, but this is the main sheet. And then up here, it says speak as PC. So if you click on that, when you're typing down here, let me type something. It will type in the name or as the character instead of just a generic one where I'll clear that. If I was, see now it says Game Master Laerun instead of just GM. So this would be the DM or the Game Master, and then this one would be the player. So it changes the character who speaks. So if you want to say something in your character's voice, you would select that and then type. There's probably another way to do it, but that's the best way I know how to do it. And also, when you're typing back and forth in the chat window, it helps the game master differentiate who's who. So just keep that in mind. All right, second tab, skills. So these are all your skills here that you can use for this particular rule set, minus the tools, the kits, and the vehicles, and all those things. So those would have to be added manually. But in order to utilize these, when you're building your character, you'll have proficiency bonuses in some of these. There is a double proficiency bonus. Then there's a half proficiency. And then there's no proficiency at all. The stat can be changed. So if you make your own, you can do that. So on the bottom right corner, you hit Edit List. And then this green plus button appears. And if you click on that, it creates a new line in which you can fill that out manually and assign a stat to it. And then if you're proficient with it, you'd put a star next to it. And it will add in your proficiency bonus plus your ability score adjustment, if there is any. And that could be positive or negative. So once you're done with that, then you can roll on this dice here. So you can I'm just going to say new skill. And once you do that, it shifts down to alphabetical order. And I'm just going to place it on strength as the stat it's based on. And then I'm going to get out of the edit mode by clicking stop edit. So I'm not in edit mode anymore. And if you double click on this little bank here, this little square, it will roll and it will give you the result, and it'll even tell you what the name of the new skill that you typed here. So that's handy for tracking things. So if you don't want to do just raw ability score checks, you can make specific skill checks for specific things. And the combat tracker, along with the chat window, will keep track of the rolls and what it is. So that is your basically your skills tab, and really not a whole lot more to it. One thing we teach is to shortcut some of your main ones. So if you're proficient with perception, or if the game master always asks you for that roll, you can drag and drop it down to the hotkeys, just like I showed you earlier, to make it more convenient for you, so you don't have to keep coming back to this page every time. You're still going to have to, but just not as often. So anything else, Shel, that you can think of?
Can't think of anything right now.
Okay. Any questions yet in the chat, or?
Nope. Anybody got any questions, please type them in the chat and I'll relay them.
Yeah, I only see 2 people, so I don't know if we have that much. Okay, so the next thing is inventory. So inventory is kind of an interesting thing. It's one of probably the most, I would say, not frustrating, but it's really not fun, because you're generally dragging stuff over one at a time, and then you're organizing it. So this probably takes the most time as far as building your character goes. Your equipment will be drag and dropped in here. It'll populate it. It'll record the weight, and you can manage if it's equipped, carried, or if it's not carried, but it'll still be in your possession. So that's that. And then you have your coins, which will go in the treasure area, and then of course you have your maximum for lifting and dragging and pushing, and then you also have a current encumbrance, which tells you how much you're currently carrying. So you have a notes tab. This is where your role-playing stuff goes, and there are 2 different spots here that are important: your size and your alignment. Those 2 things are parsed. So if you don't have your alignment filled out correctly, and if your size is not here, that usually comes over when you select your race, then it will be broken. So in other words, your token won't size correctly on the grid. And for alignment, if you're using protection from good or evil, the spell won't work correctly if if this isn't filled out. Everything else here is role play, and you get these traits. You can make them up, or you can roll from a table, depending on the background that you pick. So a lot of this is role play, except for the size and alignment. Those are mechanical. Okay, so here's the log sheet. So the log sheet is for organized play, or we call it Adventures League. There are other organizations for other rule sets, such as there's Pathfinder has one, and Starfinder has one, and those are called Society. And then I know Call of Cthulhu and some of the other ones have their own. But in this case, and this is a 5th edition rule set, so you have a log tab. If you click down here on the bottom right, edit list, it brings up the green plus button. You click there. It brings up a new journal entry. In that case, you would title it. So I just typed log there just for the sake of it. Then when you click on this little round link, which is a shield looking thing, it brings up a session log sheet. And here you'll enter your session, the date, the name of your game master and their DCI number, and then whatever events happen during your adventure. This is so you can keep track of different things that your character has gone through per the rules and the regulations of Adventures League. So you have to update this. You also have to update the website where you have your character registered. So this is a Adventure League tracking system here. If you don't use Adventure League, you can still use this as like a journal type thing if you want. But in the most cases, most people don't use it. But if you want to, you can use it just to you can fill this out for your own reasons. Okay, the Actions tab. So this is where you spend a lot of your time on your character sheet. And right now it looks pretty blank because we don't have anything selected. But all your weapons will be listed here, your spell slots, your any special effects or coding that you do, anything like that in your spell list. All those things will be listed back here when you build your character. And we have other videos previously as to how to build a character, and that'll actually show all the different data types. On the bottom left are different modes. So before you're in the edit mode, you'll have these modes down here, and there's 3 of them. So you have your standard mode, which is normally what you're in when you're building your character. There's preparation mode, and this is where it sets up your spell casting, how many times you can use your spells, how many you have prepared, that sort of thing. And then also you can set up your usages for your magic items like charges, or if you have a special ability like a monk, their key powers, you can set that up. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this sheet. It's pretty flexible. When you get into the edit mode, you have 2 options. You can add an entry for a weapon if you want to make a custom weapon, or you can add a power, which is generally where you add your custom coding. So those are the 2 options that you have when you're in the edit mode. And then when you want to get out of the edit mode, you click on this button on the bottom right again, the brown one, and it says stop editing list, and then you're out of the editing mode. And note, when you're in the edit mode, these modes down below, they disappear. So if you go to edit mode, you don't have access to those. So if you're wondering where those went, get out of the editing mode, and then your different modes will show up, so you'll be able to access them. So the modes are standard mode for creation, preparation mode is for prep and all that stuff, and then you have combat mode, which is when you're all done. That's when you're going to be playing. And then your display can be by group, it can be by actions, or summary. In the case of playing, you want it on combat and you want it on actions. And that'll show everything you have that's set up. So that is basically the character sheet broken down. So do you have any questions, Shel, or any comments? Or
Another thing that I like to do, where you mentioned about how you can customize it, is like if you were a paladin and you wanted to track your land hands, if you had, say, 12 points of lay on hands to give out, you could set up different ones to do like single amounts, or maybe like 2 or
Oh, okay.
5
I
or
get it.
10.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes it custom.
So what she's saying is, like, right now this is powers. So if I go in the edit mode and I actually assign a name for it, we'll call this a paladin abilities, I guess.
Sure.
So when you do that, it'll change the title or this header. So once I type this in, the cursor that I have is still there. That's why it hasn't switched yet. But when I click over here on the left, it'll update this to paladin abilities. One thing you might have to do if it's a custom skill and it's not really canon or normal, you can select the properties of this particular category. So if you open up the magnifying glass that's on the actual header, you'll get the power group, which is in this case paladin ability. You'll get this dialog box, and you can select if it's ability or like a spell. So most cases, if it doesn't recover normally, like with a spell, then you can just assign it this group type. But if it actually acts like a spell, you could put how many you have prepared, and you can, put the ability score on there. But in this case, we do a custom lay on hand, so the group type is going to be abilities. And if it had an ability stat that it was based on, In this case, I would put charisma in here because most of the paladin abilities, if not all, are based on a charisma. So if there's any modifiers that need to be applied, it will automatically apply any of the bonuses and saves and attacks and all that sort of thing. So now to set up custom usage, as she was saying, this is kind of getting into the coding aspect, but this also shows what the character sheet has on it. So if you right click in the cell and you click add action and then add heal in this case, because we're going to add the paladin's lay on hand abilities. So that's one type of healing. So how many points did you said we have total?
I think it's
15?
5. Is
Yeah,
it?
15.
Yeah, I think it's 5 points per level.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
if
if we
you're
were third
working
level,
with a level 3 character, it would be 15. Yes.
so if we were a third level paladin, I wrote laid on hands. I'm going to put 15 in parentheses so I know that that's how much the total is. So one button will heal 15 points of damage right off the get-go. So if it was at a D6 or a D10? I think it's a D10, right?
I don't recall. I never
3
played
times.
Paladin, so I give you an example of something I never play.
Okay. Well, and nonetheless, if that was the case, well, it's usually 5 times. So what we'll do is we'll set up a heal as 5. So all you have to do is edit, hit the plus button. Since it's not really based on a die type, you're just going to put 5 in the bonus area. So that's going to automatically assign 5 or 10 or 15, however you want to do it.
Or you could even do 1.
Or 1.
I have a similar thing for my cleric, for one of the spells that I have, where you can divide up your thing, and I would put a 1 and maybe a 2,
Right.
and then a 5 and a 10,
So I'm going
and
to
then a
add
15.
another one and another. This way you have preset amounts, so you don't have to mess around too much. So usually if you have 4 entries in here, that usually takes care of it. So you have your base, and then you have the lowest increment, and then doubled, and then multiplied, and that sort of thing. So let me do one more. So what we're going to do is on this one, I'm going to add just 2. The next one will be an increment of 5. So I click the edit button, click the add item. This is going to be 5. And the last one's going to be 10. So what that's doing is breaking down your healing into segments. And then when you're in combat, I'm going to get out of the edit mode. Then when you're in combat mode and under actions, you have choices here. And if you mouse over, you got 1, there's 2, there's 5, and then there's 10. Now, if you want to keep track of how many times you can do this per day or how many points you've used, you can go into the preparation mode. And Lady Shel, how do you normally do that? Do you just put in the usages, like the number of points, or do you put in the number of times you can use lay on hands?
I would say the number
The actual points or the number of times?
Yeah, you would
Okay.
15, because you have 15 total to use, and
Okay.
then as you use them, does it deduct from there?
No, well, it will if you put the right thing here. And
It's
then
going to
you
put
would,
the bubbles?
yeah, and then you would
Okay.
set whether it recovers daily or maybe it's a one-time use, which I don't think so. And then you
No,
have
it's
rest.
not.
So if you do a rest, it means when you recover, it's going to come back after a short rest. If you leave it on rest, or excuse me, on daily, it'll recover after you do a long rest. So now if I get out of,
they probably get it on long rest too.
yeah, probably. So here, when you're in combat mode and actions, as you use these abilities here, you can check off how many you've used. And then when you recover, when you rest, those disappear and they come off. So that's how you could use that, one of the special groups to keep track of things and to automate some of this stuff. It makes it easier on you and your game master. And then on your
And it is
weapons.
long rest.
Okay.
I looked it up.
Okay, so yes, we have it set up right. So on the also, if you don't have your weapons equipped, they don't show here when you're in combat mode. So when you're in your inventory, you have to equip the item. In this case, I just made an item. So if I go to preparation mode, I need to switch this little bag and click on actual equipped. Then when I go to combat mode, it won't disappear on me.
Got a question.
Sure.
Bangs Naughty Bits would like to know, at what point would you change from just manually handling a power of effect versus setting up these automations?
After first level, probably. It depends. It really depends on the game, the rule set. As a game master, that's what would drive me nuts. So if I had to do this manually for everybody every time, it would drive me nuts. Because to handle this, I would have to go in and manually change the hit points if you didn't do any die rolls or any sort of automation. So when someone says, hey, I want to use 2 points of my lay on hands, they would have to keep a note of it on their sheet, and then I would have to do the automation on it, which wouldn't be automated. It would just be me modifying the combat tracker. So that's the point where I decide, okay, I'm the game master. I'm tired of doing that for my players every time they do something like sneak attack, same thing. When a character says, I want to use my sneak attack ability, there's a little bit of automation that can be done on it. And to do it manually is a real pain. So there's a way that, that if you can automate it, that's when things get easier for the game master. So this isn't about the player so much. It makes it a little bit smoother once they understand what to do. But as far as the automation goes, it benefits the game master more than anything. Because once the players understand how their character sheets work and it's all coded and ready to go, it's less of a burden on the actual game master. Because you're coming over to the effects button, and then you have to apply all these things manually. And sometimes you still have to, but there are some things that can be automated. So these conditions are baked into the rule set, and if you know how to code them, some of these can be turned into a power, such as prone. You can actually set up an ability, and if it says, they have to make a strength check, and if they fail, they go prone. So you can actually set up an action instead of you, the game master, or the player, having to manually go over there, grab this and drag it and drop it on the combat tracker. So that's how it used to be, back before they automated. The other thing is your abilities. Any type of your abilities, if they can be automated, that makes it easier. Because before, if you had a trait and it was something that had an action involved, you would drag and drop the description of the trait in the chat area. The game master would open up and read it and make the adjustments accordingly. That's how most rule sets work.
We have another question.
Sure.
Doug Busek would like to know, is commenting that the Lost Mine of Phandelver module does not seem to include the silver comb that Sister Gariel gives to a PC.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to know, are there any tips on creating your own item?
That is covered in another session, but since you asked, you can. You have to create the base item first, and then you have to, I don't know what it does, but you have to go into your first of all, you need to have at least the SRD loaded, which is the system reference document or the player's handbook. Whatever rule set you're using, you need the core books loaded to help you. But if I go into the library, and I do have the Lost Mine of Phandelver and the player's handbook, so this will make it much more handy for me. So we're pretty much done with the character sheets. The only thing we have left is a note, so I can go through a little bit. So if I go to the library and I select all, that gives me all these banners. I do have the player's handbook and Lost Mine selected. So then I will go here and I will first open up the item. And here, if I wanted to make my own group of items in case I have others, I would click Edit Groups and then add a category. And in this case, I'm going to say Custom Items. Now that I have that group, this is where I'm going to build my custom item. But I really need to know what the item is and what it does. So I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to open up the reference manual. So if I click on Lost Mine of Phandelver, and then I can also go to the items to see if it's actually in there first. So is it a magic item or is it just a trinket, or that's what you have to decide. So if I go to items, and this is provided that I have the Lost Mine loaded. So if I go to item and I refilter, I'm going to go to Lost Mine of Phandelver. There's two groups. One is for standard items, one's for magic items. So I'm going to go here, and what was the name of the item?
Silver comb.
Silver comb. Yeah, like you said, it's not there. So you'll have to create it, but you have to know what the properties are of the silver comb in order to actually create it.
Did you look? Oh, you are in magic items now. I
Yeah.
was just wondering if it maybe was a magic item.
Let me check the regular just in case it's.
That's really odd, because you would think that if someone NPC is going to give you an item that it would be in there. That's odd.
Yeah, so it's not in the regular items, so definitely. So I would need to know from the context. So if I go to the reference manual, I'm going to look up silver comb.
Maybe you could look up the name of the NPC, Sister Gariel. Oh yeah, doesn't she? She gives you that comb to take to the banshee or something. You have to. Yeah, I never
here's
finished that module.
Important NPCs, and I'm clicking on Sister Gariel. She's an elf cleric of Tamora and a Harper agent. And if you go to her sheet, it's pretty bare. And it just says elf cleric of Tamora and Harper agent with a quest for the party. So it doesn't even really give you the context of it in the stat block, which you'd think it would have something in there. So I guess you'd have to go into the actual story and find out where Sister Urella comes out of.
I think I remember what happened. You have to go to the banshee or whatever it is, and I think that whatever
Agatha's lair.
I don't know who it is, but whoever you have to go to, you have to get something from her, and this person is vain or something, which is why you give her the comb. I'm pretty sure that's what happens.
Okay.
Also, we have another question from Mutation 666 says, we need a companion app for books, please.
Companion app for books? Oh, you're talking about, are you talking about the new companions, or are you talking about something else? I'm not sure. But I'm still looking for, where does she, okay, here it is. So it says, yep. The quest is, you take the quest. They want to persuade a banshee to give them an answer. And you are to bring a suitable gift, a jeweled silver comb. And you have to persuade the creature to tell what she knows about the location of a spell book. So it doesn't really say it's a magic item, but it does have a property of storytelling. So she believes that a character who flatters the vanity of this Agatha will be able to get the answer. So you're just asking for the item. So in this case, I would go back to your items list here, and I would pick, just something basic like a ring or something, some kind of jewelry, So like here's a basic platinum ring. So I would just modify this. So right now it's a ring. So I'm just going to drag and drop it into the section so I can make a copy of it. And now I have a copy of the platinum ring. So if I go back down here in alphabetical order, what was it? Platinum or ring? I don't remember. Yeah, it must be under platinum.
It was under platinum. And you can tell that it is not, that is the copy. Sometimes it doesn't say copy after it.
Yeah.
But looking at the right-hand side, you can see a little book, which means that's attached to the Lost Mine of Phandelver. The one that's blank right there, that's the one that you copied.
Okay, so this will have a lot of the properties that I already need to create the item, so I'm not creating it from scratch. So now I'm going to drop this down. I'm not clicking on anything. I clicked on the drop down menu. And there's my custom items. So I'll drag and drop this copy I made into the custom items group. And the reason I did that is because you cannot modify a copyright protected item. So if there's an item such as this, there's no option to modify it. So that's why we made a copy. But once you have a copy, you'll be able to modify. And look, I drugged the wrong one in there. So I need to fix that. So I will go back to, let's see, this is not a magic item. This is just a regular item. So I'm going to drag and drop this back where it belongs. And now I'm going to go back here again. And I'm going to look for that platinum ring, which it's here. I grabbed this bottom one. I didn't grab the correct one. So you do the drop down.
Easy to do because there's not a lot of space there.
Yeah. And then you just drag and drop this pin or this circle into the custom items area. Now I have the ring. It's not attached to anything. Now when you click on this, you have a little lock. So now you can open this up. And you could still say it's treasure. You can set the value. You can call this the silver comb now. And then you could actually, put in any lore that you want. See, I would have thought that this would be attached to the NPC. That's kind of what I would hope. When I open up a module, that connection, I would want that made. But that's actually going above and beyond which most modules do. But when I create modules and I have something that important for the quest, I would definitely have it already built. Like you were saying, why isn't it made? I agree, it should have been made at least. So you have a jeweled silver comb. So I need to go into the actual module, which is the story. This is the reference manual, but I need to go and find out where this comes up in the which chapter it is. So it must be in this.
It's when you get to Phandelver, so she is an NPC that's in Phandelver.
In Phandalin, you mean?
Phandalin. Yes, Phandalin.
Okay. And then is she in any particular building? I mean, is she in a bar?
She's in that
Stonehill.
It's not called the temple. It's a small. There it is. Shrine of Luck.
Shrine of Luck. Okay. So the Shrine of Luck, I would come here. And this is basically kind of equivalent to the story entry. And then, so for the description, I would delete that out. And if the party helps learn the spell book, the elf privately approaches them, urges them to join the Harpers. Okay, that's a DM thing. So if you get into the NPC itself, first of all, I'd want this to be linked to the character. I don't know why they didn't do that, but nonetheless, you need to bring in some of this lore. So wherever it says that, in this case, this is the quest. So you get rewarded for the quest. So if I open that up, and I take out this this statement here, I wouldn't do all of it. I would just do whatever is pertinent. So it says for successful completion, Grayella will give us 3 potions of healing as payment. That's another thing, is the potions of healing should be a parcel, and it would be linked here. So if you're given the potions after doing this comb thing, the parcel would be handy if the parcel was already created. And I don't think it is. I could be wrong, but they made the quest item, which is great. You get 200 experience for it. So let me copy and paste this text first.
I just wanted to add that I always like to refer back and forth, like, for example, linking a encounter to the map and then the map to the encounter. When you link back and forth, you always will be able to find your way back to the information that you have. And in this case, like you mentioned about putting the item on the NPC so that it's available to give to the players when they go on that quest.
Yeah, so just that. I left adventuring gear. The non-ID, I just made it as comb. I could have put these notes in the notes area, but I put the lore down here, and then I lock it. So there's the silver comb. It's now available. So this would be in the items section. However, what I was saying is that I would think that this comb and the other item might be part of this. So if I hit enter, I would put quest item as like the header. So let me drag and drop this over.
So you're linking the parcel to the quest, correct?
Yeah, but see, the problem with this is that the quest is rewarded after the fact, not
Yeah,
before.
because you have to go out and then you have to come back.
So this isn't really a good idea, but it doesn't hurt to have it there. And then the next thing is the parcel. So if I go to Lost Mine of Phandelver and I go through here, I doubt there's going to be anything about the silver comb. So there isn't. Now that the item's created, I can create my own custom loot. Here's a new parcel. I'm going to take the coins out. Of course, I have to unlock it. Okay, and then I'd put the silver comb in there. So I changed the value. I said it's worth 50 gold instead of 75. I left the weight. I gave it a rarity of rare, or you can do uncommon or whatever. And it's adventuring gear. And then it has the lore about this item. So now I would drag and drop this into a parcel. I would call this the silver comb quest or something like that, something that identifies it. And then
Maybe
lock
the
it.
parcel. Oh, I was just going to say maybe the parcel with the 3 healing potions could remain on the NPC sister, whatever her name is.
Correct. But I'm just saying that this is if you wanted to make this a parcel and you want to sell it later, you have it made. So that could be drug over there to the sister sheet. So if I can unlock that, yes, I can. Now I'm dragging the parcel. And instead of dragging this item, I made it a parcel. And the reason for that is in your party sheet, when you have a group of adventurers and you want to sell something, it's easier to divide it. So if you go to inventory and you drag and drop this parcel in there, so if you click this, it's now in their inventory and they can take it and put it in their character sheet. Then when they're done, they can drag and drop it back here, and it can be sold. If they don't give it away or something happens, you have it ready to go. And now what Lady Shel was saying is, if I open up and make another parcel, I'm going to grab 3 potions of healing from the magic item in the story of Lost Mine. So Lost Mine of Phandelver, here's a potion of healing. Drag and drop that over, put 3 here. You can even put whatever chapter it is or whatever. So potion quest reward. And now I would drag and drop that over there. Oops. So now when you finish the quest and you're dealing with this NPC, you have those available, or you can link it in the area where it appears in the story. So there's nothing preventing you from taking this information, making a copy or unlocking this, and this gives you the breakdown, and then you can edit this and put it in there. So I can put whatever I need to in this area. The only problem is that these items exist in the quest, not in the story entry. So I will drag this silver comb or the potion quest reward in there. And that way, when this comes up, you have the award, just in case you have the silver comb, but it's also on the NPC. It might be overkill, but it's better to have it like that than to have not. And this would be done ahead of time. So definitely wouldn't want to do this during this session. But yeah, I hear you. There's some little things like this that are not made. But we kind of went off tangent. So I'm going to go over one last thing, and then we'll answer more questions. So we're done with the character sheets. We're going to go to the Notes tab. And one caveat about the Notes tab is it stays with this campaign. You can't export it as part of a module. There's no function to export or anything. So all your notes are going to stay in here. You can always crack them open, like I have some session notes. You can always unlock this and put it in a story entry and then export it. But in this case, these are just set up for running Lost Mine of Phandelver. In this case, that was session 1 and there's session 0. And then here's a note, like what it looks like when you create it. And here's a new note. And the notes can be public if you click this public button, and it will be shared amongst the party. You have control over that. So if you make a note and you want to share it with everyone, that can be done on your level, not the characters. And then if you want to make a new note, you just right click create an item. Or if you click this edit list and click the plus button, it'll do the same thing. So this is how you utilize the notes, and then you give it a title, and then you put your notes in here, and you can also put links in there, whatever you want to do. So that work I did earlier, I would have probably built everything and stuck it in my notes, and then just used it as I needed it for the quest, rather than editing the module, which isn't going to hurt anything. But if you don't have the time, I would just make the parcel and the item, and then link them here and put what it's for. Then drag and drop this down to the hotkeys for your session if you plan on doing that quest and finishing it. So that's another way you could have handled that. But nonetheless, you have to know how to make the items, and you have to know where they're at and how they link together, that sort of thing. So I hear you. It should be in there, but it's not. So there's some little things that are forgotten, and I want to say that because that was buried in a quest, that's probably why. I would think that information should have been on that story entry. So when you go to, what was that, the Shrine of Luck, this is join the Harper there's the NPC stat block, which I have put them on there, but they weren't there before. I really think the quest could have been talked about a little bit more, because this doesn't really mention a whole lot about it until you open the quest. And then it tells you what you have to do. So maybe it's mentioned somewhere else, but I really think that this should be linked in here. And the story part of it should be part of the story here. And then also the parcel itself should have been made, and it wasn't. So these 3 potions, when you bring it to the character sheet, you can drag and drop the parcel into this sheet here. And then when it's time to reward, the players can take 1 or all 3 of them out, or if they want to sell them, it's all ready to go. So yeah, I agree with you. That should have been part of the module. But I think because it was buried in a parcel or a quest item, it was kind of missed. So when that happens, it's a nice thing if you have the time to report that to the proper authorities, which would be Smiteworks. So I will take a screenshot of this later, and I will send it to Zacchaeus, because I know he works on these. And he'll put it on his list of things to do, and maybe he'll decide that that is a good idea, and it should be included. But he may reject it, saying, oh, well, the DMs can do it themselves. Well, if you're a new DM, you're not going to know how to do it. So I'll argue with him about that later. But nonetheless, that's something that comes along with learning Fantasy Grounds, is knowing how to create all this content when you need it. Even if you're not making a module or doing a conversion, it's still nice to know how to create these when the time comes.
Lost Mine of Phandelver is made for new
Exactly.
DMs, so there's your argument right there.
Exactly. So good point. So I will bring that up. I've never went far enough along in the adventure to realize that that's a missing component. So that's a good catch. But that is how you would do it on the fly in any adventure if you needed to. So is there any other questions before we go? As we're looking at an hour.
I don't know. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, 15 people being really quiet.
Thanks again. I'm a new DM. Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, no problem. We have made other episodes that show more of in depth, like how the characters are built and how the items are built, and separate things. We will get into that though when we get to that item group. So all of our next 10 episodes is just going to be breaking down all of these different banners. So we will be showing how to create a very non-specific item. That's going to be a whole episode into itself, because there's 5 or 6 item types, and then there's the item forge and the templates and all that. So there's a lot to cover just in this category. And then we're going to have a separate one that talks about parcels and so on and so forth. So we're going to go down all of these different banners and break them down. Today, we went over the PC banner, and we went over the notes banner. Now, there's one more thing about this that I forgot. That is how to actually import and export. So when you want to import an item, you can click on this blue arrow that faces up, and you'll get a pop-up window from your computer to so wherever you have it stored, it will pop up a folder. You won't see it on the stream. You're going to show Fantasy Grounds. But when you have the import screen up, this is what it's going to look like when you import something that's already built, that's internal. Or if you click the up arrow again, that's going to actually pull in the XML file that you can export. Now, the export process is a little different. When you're in the character selection, you click on this edit list, and you click this blue arrow, and it will ask you to name the file, and then you'll save it on your computer, hopefully somewhere where you can find it. A lot of people save it, and they forget where it went. So I suggest you make a folder and put all your exported characters in one folder so you don't lose it. So that is basically all the functions of the character selection window. So you have create character, you have your edit where you can actually export, and then you have the import, and then the star is a new feature, which is the character wizard. So when you open this, what this does is gives you a shortcut as to when you're building your character. So you can do your race, stats, class in any order you want. You don't have to worry too much about which order you put the stats in, and then you could build from there. It makes it much easier than trying to remember all the specifics. However, this doesn't teach you how to build a character. This just allows you to create one quicker. That's all it really does. And it's something that it kind of bypasses the learning process. But if you already know what you're doing and you want to build a quick character, this is the way to start one. But when it comes to leveling and when you want to level up, it's better to know how to do it manually. But for a first level character to get it started, this is the way to go, because you don't have to monkey around with worrying about what order your character is built in so much. At first level is critical. But once you're away from first level, it's just a matter of leveling up. And I think leveling up is actually easier just to do it through the character sheet. So like Lady Shel has a cleric that's first level. All she has to do to level up is go to her magnifying glass here, which brings up her class and level. And if everything's set up right at first level, I would export this character first, just in case I had a mistake or something. And then I would drag and drop this pin or this little circle back into the same box, and that levels her up to level 2. So that's much easier than dinking around with the character wizard. So that's a good thing for leveling up, is learning how to do it within the character sheet. I don't think the character wizard was really made for that too much. But nonetheless, that's how you do it. Or on the sheet, it'll say level up, and that takes you to the wizard. So if you go to the wizard, it shows you the increase, and then you can multi-class at this point. If you have to make any adjustments, you can do that. And so it has the functionality in there. And then it's just a matter of switching out gear or adding any of your new features that you gained per level. So it's usually first, second, and third levels, then fourth, and then fifth, and then in between there, it gets fewer and fewer changes. So, but that's your character menu. So is there any other questions?
Brian said, do you suggest to export your character at the end of each campaign? I answered that I suggest exporting your character each level, so that in case when you level you up, you make a mistake, you can always go back to the previous level and start again.
That's right.
And funny enough, you just mentioned that same thing right after I said that.
Yeah. So you want to level up, but before that, export the character before you make any changes. That way, if you actually drag over the wrong thing or you break up, anything like that, it's gonna, you'll have something to fall back on. Because once you start dragging over the options on your new character sheet, you can't really go back. So if I go, okay, I want to look at backgrounds, so I'm going to open up the backgrounds area. And I want to be a criminal. Okay, it adds everything. It adds your skills. It adds your abilities, that sort of stuff. But if you decide you don't want to be a criminal, you're stuck. You can right click and you can sometimes you can remove these things, but you can't even erase this one. And then if you come over to your abilities, if you right click and delete those, it still doesn't fix whatever it. See, now I can't even delete the proficiencies. If I go into edit mode, I can delete that. And there's no edit mode on the front sheet, so I can't even delete the background. And that's true of any of these. So even if you go back, like if you grab a race, and you can't, I don't know, let me check that. So I'm going to go back to backgrounds, and I'm going to redrag over the entertainer. So it'll switch that, but it doesn't, it's not clean. And then you have to also remember to delete all the things that you got from your other items that you put in. So going back is a pain in the butt. It can be done, but it's a lot of work. You're better off just starting over. So that's why
another question.
That's why we recommend to export your character when you're done building it and before you level up. Okay,
Yeah,
what's the question?
Question?
Okay.
Banks Nodding Bits wants to know only GMs can export characters in FGU, correct? FG Classic used to let the players manage that, if I recall.
It depends. I think you're right, but I don't know. I don't have a way to check that. But yeah, character management generally was on the both the GM and the character or the players because there was a separate character manager. Okay, there was a whole separate platform that you logged in. It was called Character Manager. And that allows you more flexibility and freedom to import, export, create characters in the Character Manager. Now that has been depreciated. Now everything is done at the campaign level. And since that is the case, only the game master can modify the campaign. And that's why. Because they got rid of the Character Manager. So that's the change that they made. So traditionally, players do not have access to creating backups and stuff. The game master has to do that now. So hopefully that answers your question.
Any other questions?
No.
Alan Kara John says, you are great. I was lost in FGU, trying to be a new DM and introduce my friends to D&D before I saw your videos. Today I made my first one-shot. Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's great. We do have other videos, and if you get time, come on into a live class, because there you can answer and you know, get questions and also have a little bit more interaction with other people like yourself. But if you're fine with just watching videos, you can do it that way too. Everyone learns differently. So if you're not inclined to you know, take a class or like go back to school, in other words, you know, you could stay with the video thing. But well, I think we're going to call it a stream. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. We also have other social media outlets. We have Twitter, Facebook. So if you don't like Discord, you know, you can always get to us through the other social media platforms. This month we have the Traveler rule set featured. So we still have a little bit of D&D going on, but the main focus is the Traveler 2 second edition, put out by Mongoose Games. And we also have a drawing that you can win a digital copy of the rule set, or if you go to our symposiums, which is there's 2 of them during this month. The owner of Mongoose, along with some developers and some artists and such, will be on those shows, and the owner will give out hard book copies of the actual rule set. So if you're interested in, you know, face-to-face material, we're going to give those out during live streams. Those will probably be on Twitch, but for the time being, I just wanted you to know that every month we're going to be featuring a different rule set. Last time we did one was in November, and we did Pathfinder 1. So we're kind of doing this to branch out from just D&D. But the core of our tutorials and such are done in the 5th edition rule set. I think
I just
anything
put
else?
I just put the link to the other contest
Oh
because
yeah.
Leland just mentioned the one contest where you could win a hardcover copy of the Traveler Core Rules book. But Fantasy Grounds themselves, Smiteworks, they are comping us 2 copies of the module for Traveler Core Rules book. And if you follow that link that I put in the chat, you could sign up for that contest. It runs throughout this month.
Bang Bang just got the WOIN rule set, space rule set. He didn't even think of Traveler at all. Yeah, the thing is everything's on sale till the 5th. So if you have anything you want to buy, hopefully you got the money for it. But this is the time to do it. Licenses are cheap, and all the modules and materials are anywhere from $2 to $10 off, depending on what it is, maybe even more. And the discounts stack up. So if you already have a discount and you have a sale going on, it will add up. So you can get up to 30 to 40% off. So if you're someone like that already owns everything, and then there's a book that you don't have and you want to add it to your collection, if you put it in your cart, you'll notice the change in the cost. You won't notice it right away until you actually go to checkout. It'll show the difference. So that's a really good deal from Smiteworks. And we probably won't see another sale like this until spring or actually summer is when the next sale will be. If they do have a spring sale, it'll just be like for a couple days. They had a Christmas sale, they had a autumn sale, and they have this one sale that goes. Yeah, I hear you. Spent all day with putting a water heater in. Yeah, that sucks. But I'm just letting you know that if any of you out there need more stuff, this is the time to do it if you can afford it. I know it's tough because you got Christmas and you get those household things that come up, but we want to just make sure you know that. And it is January 3rd, 2021. So 2 days from now, which would be January 5th, 2021, the sales stop. What are the Traveler 2E rulebooks? Oh, they have a core book. They have one that talks about spaceships. They have one that talks about, character building. And it's actually pretty interesting because I went through the class and it was fun. You build your character based off events. There's really no levels, just your skills level up. And it's an interesting 2d6 system. All right, I think we're going to get going. Thanks for coming by, everybody, and happy gaming. And you want to say anything, Shel?
Just thank you, everyone that showed up here, and you can watch this video as a video later because it'll be automatically on our YouTube page. So if you missed anything, you can go and watch it from the beginning. Thank you for coming, and have a good rest of your weekend.
Bye-bye, everyone. Happy New Year.
Bye.